Hey guys, welcome to Cocal Knives. Today we're going to be looking at the Kershaw Vedder. Now, we can't like them all, guys. Occasionally we're going to run into a couple knives here that we don't like. Unfortunately, this happens to be one of those cases, and we'll get into that in a little. First off, we're going to take a quick look at the technical specs here and see what's going on. All right, guys, so looking at some of the specs here that I care about. First off, we're looking at a 3 1/4 inch blade. It's flat ground, Wharncliffe style. Weight on this is going to be 4.57 ounces, which is kind of up there. Now, it's technically classified as a liner lock. Now we'll get into that comment in a few, but technically a liner lock. Pocket clip is tip up right or left hand carry, and stainless steel G10, and blade finish is the titanium nitride coating that Kershaw typically uses. With all the specs out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the blade. All right, guys, so blade here actually isn't too bad. Most of my complaints here are not regarding the actual blade. So looking at just the steel here, like I said, Wharncliffe, I typically don't go for Wharncliffe style blades, but it's not too bad here. I kind of do like how it looks. I think it would look a little bit better without the swedge here at the top, but not a huge deal. You got little cutouts here at the flipper tab and the blade. They don't serve any other function other than aesthetics. They certainly don't do anything in terms of weight cutting. The titanium nitride coating, I think it's a bit overdone at this point. Now, it's something that Kershaw typically does on their budget knives, and that's great, but maybe they can switch it up, especially on something where you got the handles all gray, the blade all gray. Kind of just switch it up a little bit. Actual cutting edge is not bad. I will touch on this a little bit later on in the video, but it's not bad. It slices decently well. Like I said, it's basically, if you look at it, it's a full flat ground blade. It doesn't look like a full flat ground just because of the swedge, but I mean, if you just take a look at the grind here, it goes all the way up to the spine of the blade. Pair that with the fact that it's a Wharncliffe and you got your tip kind of at the lower end of the blade, you get a pretty fine point here. Really good for draw cutting, piercing, just a really good multi-purpose blade. So, nothing completely standout here. Works pretty well. There it is. That's the blade. Just, not a whole lot going on. One thing that I do want to point out, though, while we're here is jimping on the spine of the blade and the flipper tab is actually quite superb. And I'm not just saying that for this price range. I'm saying that in general. It actually provides traction, and it's not too sharp, but it gives you just the right amount of grab. Especially on the flipper tab, it really gives you good traction to get on there. Even though it's assisted, it does help to have that little bit of extra traction. So that's everything on the blade that I have to say. Now we're going to move into the handle of the blade. All right, guys, so let's take a look at the handle and see what's going on here. At least for me, this is where the knife really drops off quite a bit. And not just because of personal preferences, but there's also some fundamental knife design flaws here that are not just a matter of personal taste. They're kind of just wrong. So first off, we're just going to take a look at the aesthetics. It's got this kind of milled crater pattern on the handle. Not really my style, but it's not horrible. I could see some people be into that. Kind of the second thing going in here, this is technically classified as a liner lock, but look at how thick the stainless steel liners are. I put that in quotations because, it's just stating this right off the bat. The G10, they're really more just decorative pieces rather than handle scales. So, I mean, really, this is just a frame lock knife with some G10, little G10 pieces on them just to enhance the looks, maybe the grip a little bit, but that's about it. Partially the weight problem, the 4.57 ounces, is due to that fact. Now, you got these huge, well, not huge, but they're just thick for what you would call liners for the liner lock with G10. As you would kind of expect, nothing is skeletonized. See if I can get that in there for you. In this case, an area where they could have improved is where you have G10, you could have skeletonized that even fully, and nobody would really notice. That way you could have at least cut down on some of the weight and kind of alleviated that issue at least a little bit. So I think that was a huge miss. If they're going to call this a liner lock, they might as well live up to it and kind of own it. As far as the backspacer goes, I've commented that I don't really like the whole plasticky deal here. Again, it's not a huge deal. That's just kind of a personal nitpick of mine. It still works just as well. You get a huge space for lanyards here if you want one. You can very easily get full paracord through there. Now, going into probably my biggest gripe of this blade, and really the thing that makes me not just not like it, but makes it kind of uncarryable for me, is the pocket clip. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, what's wrong with that pocket clip? It's what they always use. You're right. The deep carry pocket clip on this knife is what Kershaw uses in many of their models. And the pocket clip itself works very well. If we're just talking about the pocket clip, I do like it. I've got a bunch of Kershaws that have this exact one, and it works very well for what it is. You can see, even though the screws aren't countersunk, there's plenty of room for your pocket material to hit all the way back there and sit fully in the clip. The lip gives you just enough room to actually enter into the pocket, and it doesn't, catch on anything very easily. It lays down fairly flat. Now, the huge, huge fail for this is where the pocket clip is positioned. If you're looking at it straight, look at how much of that pocket clip is literally hanging off of the handle of the knife. Might not think it's a huge deal just looking at it, but if you have it in hand, and right now even, just the way that I gripped it, if you're bearing down on it just a little bit, that pocket clip gets right there in that soft spot of your pinky, and it's really uncomfortable. I'm not usually one to nitpick on, hot spots on pocket clips. If I mention it or if I notice it, I might mention it, but it's not really a huge complaint usually that I have. In this case, it's really bad, and it really ruins the knife whenever you have to use it, or if you're just holding it and you're like, gosh, it just doesn't feel good. Maybe it's just me, but it's horrible on this knife. I just really makes it bad on otherwise what would have been a mediocre at best knife. Really drags it down to really bad level, I would say. So biggest issues here is weight, and the pocket clip are just really bad, unnecessary. So, getting rid of the handle, let's at least talk about action and fit and finish. All right, guys. So I'm not totally biased here. I'm still going to give this knife a fair shake. So let's go over the action first. This is a speed safe assisted opening knife, which means it's got Kershaw's patented speed safe technology, which is just a torsion bar that's a spring. When you're closing the knife, it loads up. When you flip the knife, it flies open. That's one of the main things they did right on this knife is the speed safe. I mean, it works tremendously well. The knife flies open and it deploys hard. So the first few times I, flipped the blade, reset it, flipped it, I was kind of shocked. It flies out really fast. More so than a lot of the other Kershaws that I've handled. Certainly much better than the Link that I have that I usually carry. But yeah, it flies super fast, super hard. I was quite honestly very impressed. Other than that, it's your typical assisted knife action. There's really, not much else to talk about, even if maybe it's it's not smooth, but you can kind of get by on that because it's assisted. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the fit and finish of this knife. Also, not horrible. It's kind of harder to tell because of this little crater pattern that they did. But otherwise, no like irregularities in, the handles or the machining or anything like that. Main thing that I don't like is you can see the little molding line here on the whatever it is, FRN or GRN for the backspacer. Again, not a big deal. It is what it is, but just saying, if it was aluminum or G10, you wouldn't have that issue. It would just be a seamless backspacer. Other things, there's just a tiny bit of blade play, just a hair, side to side, nothing up and down. So not like the cancerous kind, but side to side, maybe a little bit. And blade is not totally centered. Now, those are my two pet peeves. However, I'm not going to knock it too much. It's a company like Kershaw. They're not going to get every knife that comes out of the factory right. With a little bit of adjusting, a little bit of a tinkering, I can probably work that out myself. Most often it's an assembly issue, so I'll tinker around with it, see if I can fix it. If I decide to continue to carry this, which most likely not in this case, but we'll see. So yeah, those are really the only things going on with it in those regards. And so now we're gonna just do our overall comments, my kind of closing statements, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, guys. So kind of my closing statements here and my overall thoughts. Functionally, as a knife, it works, of course. All the other miscellaneous things about this knife really drag it down into a bad category. The weight's a big issue. Usually it's not something that I complain too much about. I try to consider all things. For a knife that is carrying a 3¼ inch blade, 4.57 ounces is just too much, plain and simple. That's just too heavy for a blade of this size. Oftentimes you'll see full titanium frame locks that carry a blade of 3.5 to 3.75 inches that will still come under that weight, and at least by a ½ ounce, maybe 4 ounces, or sometimes even less. So that's kind of inexcusable here. Again, the pocket clip is just horrible. I'm surprised something like that would even have passed the design process. It's just poor design choice. What this knife would have been without some of these glaring issues could have been okay. Right now, my rating out of 10, honestly, I would have to give it maybe a 5 out of 10. It's not horrifying. It's just not good. So, honestly, my honest opinion is maybe look somewhere else. I would pass on this knife maybe, unless you just find yourself head over heels on the looks of it. If you're just in love with how the knife looks, hey man, go for it. I'm not going to knock you for it. But for me, I'm just not feeling it, man. So that's the Kershaw Vedder. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe and like the video if you like the content. Stay up to date with the channel. Otherwise, we're going to catch you guys next time. Thanks.